right, guys, welcome back from the long 4-day weekend. I hope you guys had a restful, relaxing time with your families. This week, we're going to start a unit that covers groundwater. And groundwater is exactly what you would think it is. It is the name for all the water that's stored underground between sediment or within fractures in rock. And so, when we look at groundwater resources, it's important to talk about the fact that it is the most abundant freshwater resource that we have here on Earth. So the hydrosphere is mostly salt water. If we took a pie chart, 97% of the pie is salt water, which leaves about 3% fresh water, most of which is in the form of frozen ice in Antarctica and Greenland, and then glaciers in high mountainous regions. Very little, only about 0.6% of the hydrosphere is actually groundwater. And despite that, it's the most abundant freshwater resource for humans on Earth. So if we look at the total breakdown of all the world's water and consider that this represents 3% of all of our hydrosphere, most of that is frozen in ice and glaciers. Only about a third of the 3%, so about 1%, is groundwater. And then even less than that, like a fraction, 0.00 something percent, is surface water. So really, when you look at the whole hydrosphere, the amount of fresh water that we have stored underground and on the surface is very, very small, which is why it is exceptionally important for us to understand this resource. So the fact that we have very little of it, and the fact that we use about 350 billion gallons of fresh water per day is cause for concern, because as Earth's population continues to rise, those resources are not as plentiful as they once were. So what is groundwater used for? Primarily irrigation, which would be watering fields and crops, especially in like the central United States or central California, where there's a lot of farmland. It's also used obviously for domestic purposes, so bathing, showering, washing clothes and dishes, industrial use, and also energy. But here's the breakdown. Generally, when we look at our groundwater resources, you can see that irrigation takes up most of the pie. Again, this would be for farmland and agriculture. And then public supply would be domestic use. And then in addition to that, mining, aquaculture, livestock, industry, etc. So it's definitely a resource that we use in our daily lives. I'm going to stop this part of the video lecture and continue with where groundwater is stored. And we'll talk about recharge areas and precipitation in the second video.